Good morning. Thank you for watching The Weather Now. Kind of a tropical update edition here. We're going to talk about the big player on the field, and that is Florence, now a major hurricane. You can see satellite behind me. Notice this little feature here, the eye moving west-northwest. It's cleared out. It's rapidly strengthening, and it looks clear on satellite because temperatures within the core warm, and the cold cloud tops are what are giving off, that white appearance there. So it's rapidly organizing. Visually, it looks more impressive, and by visual inspection of it, forecasters, meteorologists knew it was strengthening. Hurricane hunters checking it out, and officially we do have a Category 3 hurricane. Sustained winds of 115 miles per hour. Now, again, kind of a more broad look for you right now. It's moving just north of due west, and you can see the banding here. And I'm going to step maybe into the shadows here, so bear with me, but notice the banding on the south side and the north side, almost looking like a little buzzsaw is a phrase you may have seen thrown around online talking about these intense tropical systems. It's starting to have the look, and certainly it's strengthening, but it's not that big of a system. This is not a huge sprawling cyclone. This is a very intense but also relatively small major hurricane now. Moving to the west-northwest at 9, probably going to need to update that. Probably a very similar motion, but that needs to be updated with the most recent recon data. Not expecting any big changes there. Forecast to be a Category 4 by this evening, 8 o'clock or so. Tomorrow morning, Category 4. Tomorrow evening, Category 4. They have peak intensities here at about 150 miles per hour. Cat 5, that's 157. So we're getting close to Category 5 status. Again, a very intense, very historical in strength. Category 4 hurricane, something we don't see all the time. Of course, we had a few strong ones last year, and this will be one for the record books for portions of the mid-Atlantic. Now, this is the track, latest and greatest, no significant changes. Forecast to continue moving north and westward, and notice how the cone is fairly, thin towards the end. We're now within 4 days or so of landfall. Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, really 3 days of landfall. So the confidence is growing as to where it's going to go. Now, can shifts still happen? Yes. Do wobbles still occur? Absolutely. Do we know exactly which part of the coast is going to be impacted the most? No, not exactly. But we can tell you Coastal Empire, low country, the risk of direct impacts has been decreasing pretty steadily from what it was looking like over the weekend as a low but present possibility, now certainly an unlikely scenario, but still something that we will need to be watching closely. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out my phone here. If you see me looking down at my phone, I'm answering your questions on the WTOC TV Facebook page. Looks like we have a lot of questions, comments, maybe a few concerns out there, 114 comments. Jessica says, wow, Cat 5. Yeah, not the official forecast, but certainly a possibility. It's going to be getting close, going over very warm waters, little to no wind shear, a lot of favorable ingredients for there to be briefly a period that it could achieve Cat 4, strong Cat 4. We know it's going to reach Cat 4. But strong Cat 4, marginal Cat 5 status before it begins to weaken again as it approaches land. Elizabeth is watching from Tybee. Felicia is watching from Garfield, Georgia. Kristen asking about Georgia. Lisa, what are the chances of high pressure pushing it down more? If you're talking about impacting us in Savannah directly, very, 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 very low. But any shift south could alter the forecast, particularly for the low country. Daniel says, I'm heading back to Boston, Massachusetts if we get hit. Not expecting any direct impacts here at the moment. Of course, any shift to the south could cause an alteration to that forecast. Nicole says, bridge closures for the islands, Hilton Head. No, again, folks, we need folks to listen. Now is the time to listen because there's so much information being thrown your way, and it's only going to get worse when I talk about all the other systems out there right now. But just know, we are not expecting any direct impacts here. In fact, decent weather. If this follows, again, it's a huge if here. But if this track were to verify pretty closely, we will see little to nothing here, low country coastal empire, but any shift to the south, and we will have to reevaluate the forecast and projected impacts. But if this track holds, which is looking more and more likely to North Carolina it goes, then impacts here will be very, very minor. In fact, tides, remember, we'll have an offshore wind out of the north. That'll help keep tides a little bit further out. There will be some water level rise, but it appears to be pretty minor this far south and down the coast. So we're not worried about it now, but it certainly still deserves our attention. We're not completely out of the woods, but the trend continues to be focused on the PD of South Carolina up into coastal North Carolina. Chad, thank you for watching. Barbara, thank you for watching. You're very welcome. Tammy, Connie, hello to you. Nathan says rain, and wind. Kenja says, is it true? There's 3 storms in the water now, 3 hurricanes in 2 areas that may develop in a tropical system. So yeah, it's really busy out there. Rosona and Myrtle Beach, that is an area that you still need to be worried for issues. Sherry says bridges will close around 40 miles per hour in North Carolina lower beaches. That may be the case up in North Carolina, but wind's not expected to be that strong even on this path here in the low country. Maybe some 25, 35 mile per hour gusts. But aside from that, here locally, again, Jasper County, Hampton County, Beaufort County, that's our low country counties back into the Georgia Coastal Empire. The impacts would be minimal. No severe weather would be expected if this track holds. If it shifts to the south, which is a very low possibility at this point, then we would have to reevaluate the forecast and perhaps bring some stormier weather back in. Aaron Moix, Parata, hopefully I pronounced your name correctly. Apologize if I didn't. Tropical wind for Savannah looking unlikely on this present track. Callie, could it shift and hit Beaufort, South Carolina? You know, technically anything is possible, but looking unlikely. Again, this is the official track from the Hurricane Center. And continue. Notice the cone is relatively thin now into the PD of South Carolina, North Carolina. A lot of the model data is indicating that same general trend. So it's not a 0% chance. We work in the world of fluids here. Weather behaves like a fluid. It evolves. Things change. It happens, as we all know. But not expecting any big changes at the moment. But we want you to be alert because Mother Nature will do what she will, and sometimes those changes can happen pretty quickly. But we're not expecting that as it stands now in the situation. Data has been increasingly insistent on a PD of South Carolina, Myrtle Beach area, up into the kind of the Wrightsville Beach area, North Carolina, sort of landfall, perhaps even a little bit further north and northeast than there. Laura, I'm not sure where Jacksonville, North Carolina is. I suggest you tune in to the local stations up there, WECT out of Wilmington, WBTV in Charlotte. But North Carolina is going to get a nasty storm. This will be a historic storm for North Carolina and maybe northern portions of South Carolina as well. And it's not just the winds and the wave and the storm surge, also inland flooding. This is going to be a slow-moving system dumping an incredible amount of rain and causing a pretty significant flooding. Daniel, I'm going to get to our local forecast here in just a moment. Tanya, how bad will it get in Charlotte, North Carolina? Not exactly sure. It just depends on the exact track. I would anticipate flooding, being inland flooding, rainfall flooding to be the biggest issue in the Piedmont of North Carolina and kind of that area into South Carolina as well, especially Charlotte and points east of Charlotte towards Raleigh-Durham and up to Richmond. Kenja, Cutters, they're making plans to evacuate Savannah, Georgia, and Carolina if the hurricane shifts. Of course, our local officials are always on the ball, even before this thing even formed. From June 1st through November 30th, of course, this is something that they practice for every single day almost, even outside of hurricane season. So they're watching it, but we're not forecasting any big shifts, and there are no calls for evacuations in the WTOC viewing area because, remember, folks, an intense storm does not mean a big storm in size. This is a relatively, as I back it up, small hurricane. Let's back it up even a step further. For those just joining us, now Cat 3. We knew that was going to happen. Can tell you now it's going to be a Cat 4 later today, getting close to Cat 5 status. Very strong Category 4 tonight into tomorrow, even into Wednesday. So Florence is gaining strength. But as size goes, and I know you don't have too many land comparisons here, but this is not a massive in size hurricane. It's an intense hurricane, you know, and oftentimes the most intense hurricanes are the smaller ones, and there's physical reasons for that. But this is not a big sprawling system. This is not as big as Irma. It's a very tight, pretty compact, but very intense, dangerous hurricane that now increasingly looks likely to impact the PD of South Carolina and portions of coastal North Carolina directly, while we here are well removed and on the south and west side of that circulation. Leanne says, we are very close to the South Carolina line. How much do we need to worry? Be vigilant. Do not worry. just be vigilant. Stay tuned to the forecast, WTOC.com, on TV, WTOC weather app, but there is still no need to worry here directly locally. I would be worrying a little bit more if I was up in Myrtle Beach, if I was up in the PD of South Carolina, if I was up in Wrightsville Beach, if I was up in the Outer Banks, if I was in North Carolina, but that's a bit of a different story down here. Cindy, same story in Statesboro. I'm not worried, but it still deserves our attention. Subtle shifts can and do happen, but not the most likely scenario at this time. Again, it looks unlikely we are going to have any direct impacts here locally. Cindy, what is creating the shift? North, again, there's a high pressure built in, pushed it westward, will weaken just slightly and allow that northward poleward trend as well as the strengthening. And there's a bunch of physical factors there, but there's no real shift. We knew this wasn't going to come. We knew it wasn't going to be the most likely scenario, I should say, for it to hit us. And it's still not. It's still unlikely it's going to hit us. It was always just up the coast that had the greatest risk of direct impacts from Florence. Lisa, Boone, North Carolina, that far west up in the mountains, you may get some rain, but a lot of the impact is going to be displaced just to your east, up into Virginia, the Delmarva, down to Richmond, D.C., Baltimore, and on down into coastal North Carolina. Hey there, Anita. Thank you for watching. Yana, do Savannah need to evacuate? No, 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 no. Folks, all we need you to do is to just have information, and this shouldn't be a big surprise to anybody. Everything that I'm telling you now should just be a repeat from this morning, really repeat from the past couple of days. If anything, it looks better and better and better for us, but we just don't want to turn our backs because there is still uncertainty in the forecast a little bit. Still not looking like we're going to get any direct impacts here. Category 4 forecast to make landfall coastal North Carolina. Tropical storm force winds extend out about 140 miles or so from the center now. We are much more than 140 miles away from Wilmington, North Carolina. And some data even suggests it could go in a little bit further north and up the coast from there. Barbara, I agree with you exactly. Jessica Meeks, no, not back moving west again. These are rumors, fake news. That is flat out fake news. This is, it's going according to plan, reasonably so. Of course, it is Mother Nature. It's a spinning top in the middle of a pool. So it's going to behave as it does, but no big changes, no big old turns west. So be careful what you put on these social media platforms because it starts rumors, it kind of starts panic, and it resonates in the wrong ways with viewers. So make sure you're staying tuned. The National Hurricane Center, WTOC Weather Team has you covered. All local news agencies have your back, but make sure they're legitimate news agencies. And of course, we here at WTOC working extra hard to make sure that you are covered. Jeff, yeah, Wilmington, North Carolina certainly is under the gun, more so definitely than we are down here. We can't turn our backs. We can't ignore it. We can't take things for granted. But still looking like most of it, it's Shannon, according to Cutter, it's a small storm. Clueless. Where's Pat Prokop? Shannon, this is a small in size storm, as storms go. Small does not mean strength. Remember, small is a size descriptor, and strong or weak is a strength descriptor. This is a small storm. I will say it again. As hurricanes go, this is not a vast in size system, Shannon. This is a relatively small storm. Here's Hispaniola down here, Dominican Republic, Haiti. This storm is bigger than that, but not about as big as South Carolina and North Carolina combined. It's not as big as the Gulf of Mexico. It's not as big as Texas. It's not as big as Irma was last year. This is a reasonably compact storm system. So yes, Shannon, it is a smaller system, and that is big for us because if this was a huge storm system, even if it were going up into North Carolina, we would still be more worried about direct impacts here locally. But because it's small in size, Shannon, which it is, I will say that over and over and over again, strength, not determining factor of size. Andrew, 92, Cat 5, a tiny little hurricane. Let's think back to Gordon just a few weeks ago. The reason it was able to ramp up pretty quickly, it was a small storm in size, and we've seen this over and over again. So it is a small storm in size, but also has an incredibly intense wind pattern with it, and it is strong. So there you go. Hopefully that kind of explained it. Kaya, thank you for watching. Jennifer, hurricane force winds only extend out 25 miles from the center of circulation. Only 25 miles. So, that's like the distance from Savannah to maybe near, just past Richmond Hill a little bit. That's the width of hurricane force winds around, not even the 100+ mile-an-hour winds, just the hurricane force winds around that center of circulation. And tropical storm force winds only extend out 140 miles per hour, or 140 miles or so. I think earlier it was 125. That's relatively small. Irma had tropical storm force winds extending out 400 miles from the hurricane, the center of circulation. So again, Shannon, it is a small in size storm, and I'm sure Pat would agree with that. But thank you for the comments. I'm happy to explain things even further, but definitely. Jessica, when is the next update? We just got one at 11. That's when they upgraded it to a Cat 3. We'll get another one coming up here at 2 p.m., 5 p.m. But some of the advisories really aren't big changes, but as soon as they issue watches, probably later today or tomorrow, they're going to do what we call intermediate advisories, and every single update that they normally do a day will have new data coming in about Florence. But for the time being, it's really just every 6 hours so we get those valuable updates. So we'll have another big one probably coming up about 5 p.m. or so this evening. Anita, give her a break. Many people get upset. I'm not calling her out, but if you're gonna use the feed to say that I'm incorrect and create doubt and concern, I just want to make sure, Anita, that I'm on here ensuring that I'm giving accurate information, and it is. And you can ask Pat Prokop, he'll tell you the same thing. As hurricanes go, this is a relatively compact and a relatively small hurricane. So I'm going to definitely defend that, because we're trying to give official information here, not cause hysteria and worry, because I know it's scary to have a Cat 4, maybe, unfortunately, even stronger, not too far away from us as the crow flies, but size is everything, science is everything, and the size, the small nature of the system will have an impact for us for the better if this does go in north of us, which is, as all the forecast data is indicating right now, appears to be the case. So you're welcome, Angel. Let's see. Eva, how about Isaac and Helen? South and east, no impact. Thank you, Ann, for watching. Let's see. Kimberly wants to know, flooding, power outages in Beaufort, a concern, effects on Conway, South Carolina. Conway, South Carolina, yes. I believe that's up in the PD near Florence and Myrtle Beach.
Just off west of Myrtle Beach.
Yeah, so just Dave Turley's just outside of the screen there, just west of Myrtle Beach. That area will be impacted heavily. Up in the PD of South Carolina, if you have friends, family there, maybe you have property there, they do need to be bracing for Category 4 impacts at this time. But that's up in Conway. Again, just want to clarify for us down here, completely different story per the latest forecast track. Let's see. Thank you, Faye. Thank you, Kiana. Okay, a lot of folks asking about the other storm, so I just want to move on a little bit, and we're going to talk about what else is going on. Again, that's the track for Florence. Forecast landfall late Thursday, early Friday. PD of South Carolina really supposed to cross near Wilmington, but of course the subtle differences can mean different landfall locations. What else we have going on? We have Hurricane Helene, sustained winds 105, Cat 2 right now. Should redo that, Cat 2 right now. Forecast to become a major hurricane, moving off to the north, and then north-northwest, really west-northwest, then north-northwest. This will likely remain a fish storm. Again, this is the Cabo Verdes. That's the Azores up there. And that's going to remain well east and away from the United States. A little closer to home, something we're watching as well. We have Hurricane Isaac, Cat 1, sustained winds at 75 miles per hour. Forecast now to remain a Cat 1 as it cruises almost due west into the Caribbean. There is uncertainty out here, but notice the timestamp on that little tag there. This is Saturday morning. We have all week to watch this, and not posing a direct threat to here in the United States yet, but this will be something to watch. Maybe Gulf of Mexico. Can't rule out a more northward motion here. Just a very slim possibility at this point, but one of the few that we'll be watching this weekend into early next week. But for now, Florence is still the main focus for us here in the Coastal Empire and the South Carolina Low Country. You're very welcome, Kimberly. Hope that helps. Betty, up in Fort Bragg, a lot of rain. The big deal up there, isolated tornadoes up in Fort Bragg and flooding. Flooding is going to be significant all the way up into Virginia. Fort Bragg area, we're talking 15, 25 inches of rain in isolated areas. Pretty good bet with a slow-moving or stalling major hurricane. So Fort Bragg, I think it is going to be flooding that is going to be the biggest issue. Nick, is it going to affect Hope You Like It? Not right now, not forecasting any direct impacts. That looks like it's going to be mainly to our north. Well to our north, actually, up in North Carolina. So Georgia Coastal Empire, even the low country may get out of this just okay with not even that much in the way of impacts at all. But any shift south, and that could change. So we'll be sure to keep you updated. Tillman, South Carolina, not looking too far because, that's in our area. Jasper County, Hampton County, Beaufort County. Those are our WTOC low country counties that we forecast for. And it's looking like you all will miss even the more significant impacts. We'll have a northerly breeze, offshore wind, maybe even hotter and sunnier conditions because on the west side we tend to have suppression, that's sinking air. That tends to reduce rain and increase temperature. So it all depends on these subtle movements here. Right now, I'm not worried about Tillman. I'm not worried about the Georgia Coastal Empire. I'm not worried about the low country. But I do encourage you to remain vigilant in case we do see any further shifts to the south. Betty, thank you for watching. Terry in Charlotte. Looking really wet up there, especially just east of Charlotte, headed towards Raleigh, Durham, Fort Bragg. Someone asked about earlier, heavy rain and flooding, even aside from the wind risk, will be an issue. This is going to be a big problem for North Carolina, and unfortunately it is looking like it's going to cause quite a bit of damage, both from inland flooding and the coastal wind and storm surge. Crystal says, traveling to New York Wednesday morning, what effects? Since you're ahead of the storm, not exactly sure if your specific flight will be delayed, but there could be impacts to regional flight as just the airport hubs prepare for the storm. Rosie in Swainsboro, not looking at much. Telania, hopefully I pronounced your name correctly. Apologize if I didn't. Someone asked about Tybee Saturday for a wedding. Right now it's looking good. Maybe a little breezy. The waves will probably still be kicking up, but right now it's looking pretty decent. Of course, subtle changes to the forecast possible, but if the forecast holds, it will be decent wedding day Saturday on Tybee if that forecast track holds. Casey, haven't heard much talk on those areas like Norfolk, Virginia, asking for a friend. Casey, Newport News, Norfolk, all the same area. When it comes to a hurricane, something with these kind of effects, it's not quite like a severe thunderstorm, bigger area being impacted. So Newport News, Hampton Roads, Norfolk, all that area going to get nasty weather, onshore flow, coastal flooding, heavy rain, but that's up in coastal Virginia. That area, I think the station is WKRG, is a really good affiliate up there. They have good news and good weather and a great weather team if they're looking for a local news station to kind of follow along. Hopefully that helped there, Alex. Thank you for watching, Joanne. That means a lot. Thank you, Paula, for watching. Winston-Salem, it could be really nasty there too, especially inland flooding. That's what we're watching for that area. Sonia, what about Savannah? Again, not forecasting any major impacts here locally. So let's talk about how the next few days are going to play out. Florence is a rapidly strengthening hurricane, now major hurricane category 3. It will be a Cat 4, approaching Cat 5 status. I know that may make you nervous. I promise you it doesn't make me too nervous as long as that thing doesn't come this way. And right now it's not looking like it will. That is one of the least likely scenarios, but it still, of course, deserves our attention. Data suggests Myrtle Beach to southeast North Carolina, Wilmington, Wrightsville Beach, that area, maybe the southern Outer Banks, OBX area, as the most likely place for a direct landfall. And remember, and I'm going to say it again, this is a very intense, devastating in strength hurricane, but in size, it is a relatively small storm. Size does not equal strength. Andrew was an example of that. We have seen other hurricanes in history be an example of that. We saw Gordon strengthen pretty quickly as it approached the Gulf Coast last week. One of the reasons it was able to do that was because it was a small hurricane. Those small ones tend to be the nastiest. Camille is another example of that, of the relatively small hurricanes that are especially intense. So size small, strength strong. One of the strongest, of course, on the Saffir-Simpson scale. Wednesday, Thursday, this is what I'm expecting for impact. So if you're wondering what's going to happen here, if it makes that Wilmington, North Carolina-ish area landfall, we're going to have big surf. Offshore breeze, though. Remember, out of the north-northwest, drier air. maybe sunnier conditions, and maybe the rain just stays altogether away from us. We could have drier air wrapped in on the west side of this, so it'll be big waves, but an offshore breeze kind of blowing against the waves, so that's kind of interesting. And then rip current risk will be extremely high, a stretch of bad beach days there. But overall, inland impacts appear minor to minimal to maybe none the further south and west you go, maybe a little breezy. But not even, crazy winds or winds that can really disrupt your day. That's the way it looks right now. Any shift to the south, and we'll have to update the forecast. But we're speaking on terms of the forecast from the National Hurricane Center and what a lot of the data continues to show this morning, which is a targeted landfall from about Myrtle Beach into the southeast part of North Carolina. And the timing-wise, late Thursday evening into early Friday morning, that appears to be the most likely time period for landfall. Let's see, Gail, but is there a chance for it to turn more towards Savannah? I can't say no. There's always a chance, but it is very unlikely, and much more likely. Remember, we're out of the cone now. I'm going to go back to that. It is much more likely that the system makes landfall in the far northern South Carolina, Sapedi, into southern and southeastern portions of North Carolina. So again, technically this is just a computer graphic. We can't live and die by the lines here. We just can't. That's not a good way to live when it comes to living on the coast in hurricane season. But low country coastal empire, maybe a fringe of Hampton County is the cone, but we've continued as we get closer and closer to landfall here, seeing that cone shrink and data become more and more consistent with a PD of South Carolina. What I mean by that, Florence, Conway, Myrtle Beach, into coastal North Carolina, Wilmington, over to maybe Wrightsville Beach, also maybe even the Outer Banks. Best case, it kind of stalls there, then moves out to sea. Probably not going to happen, but even less likely that we here in the Savannah Metro are directly or even significantly impacted by this system. Sally Hilton Head again looking breezy, offshore winds, big old waves, some of the biggest we've seen, maybe in a couple of years or a few years, because this is going to kick up swells and we're going to have an offshore breeze. So really incredible surf photography is possible here, but not expecting any major impacts. Yes, Tammy, the cone is for the eye only. Just because we are not in the cone doesn't mean we won't see catastrophic damage from winds and rain. Tammy, yes, that's why I said, don't live and die by the lines, but it is looking incredibly unlikely per the latest data that we are significantly impacted here. It's not impossible. I don't want a false sense of security. I don't want to say don't watch it. I don't want you to just ignore the forecast for the next 3 days. We don't want you to do that. But what I am going to tell you is that it's most likely to hit the PD of South Carolina, Myrtle Beach, over to Wilmington, and that is the track from the Hurricane Center. So Monday, today, Monday 11:36, Tuesday 11, we'll just say Monday at noon now-ish, Tuesday at noon, Wednesday at noon, Thursday at noon. We're a little under 4 days now from landfall. So we're starting to get more confidence, and it's looking like it's well up and away from us. And just to give you an idea, I am going to step off of the screen here and draw out the extent of tropical storm force winds as it stands right now. So you're going to hear me talking, and you're going to see me drawing here in just a moment, but I want to give you an idea of how far these winds stretch out. So let's say, again, Mother Nature is not perfect, but tends to follow within the cone this far out. So I'm even going to be a little generous. Tropical storm force winds extending out 125 miles or so with the latest advisory. That would bring tropical storm force winds only to about, even north of Charleston, maybe Georgetown area. That's tropical storm force winds. Beyond that, it's much weaker. It may be breezy, but it'll be a low humidity breezy if this track holds. So we may not see any severe weather here, but if that track shifts south, if this decides to come in, maybe closer to Charleston, Georgetown, then yes, we would be talking about tropical storm force winds possibly in the South Carolina low country. Anika, has it turned more north or has the cone of possibility just gotten smaller? Excellent question. Anika, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. It has gotten smaller. And why has it gotten smaller? Because confidence has increased. They tend to always get smaller as we get closer and closer to landfall. It starts out big, day 5, day 6, or really day 5. Remember, cone goes out 5 days, so it's big old 5 days because there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of options, and it closes the gap as we get closer and closer and closer to landfall because our confidence as forecasters and meteorologists grows, and that's kind of reflected in the range of possibilities or the cones there. Courtney says we were probably just going to get a little bit of the outside of the storm, kind of like Matthew was, I'm guessing, as of now, unless it decides to shift. We won't even, no, it won't be like Matthew. If this track holds, folks, we're not going to get nasty weather here. We're going to have dry offshore winds, maybe some water level rises, minor stuff at the coast. If the track holds, what we are a little more vigilant of, and what we all need to be vigilant of, is that possibility of a southward shift somewhere within the cone of uncertainty, which, as someone pointed out earlier, and is a good point, is that's this forecast for the eye. So, of course, if it goes in Georgetown, within the cone still, we would see more significant impacts here, especially in the South Carolina low country. But that remains a pretty remote possibility, something that can't be ruled out, but something that we will be watching here. Let's see. What is it? D says, what is the chance it will hit Savannah, Georgia, or Hinesville directly? Less than 5% or so. Only a couple of ensemble members indicating anything like that. What I mean by that is out of 100 computer models that are showing forecasts for this system, for example, less than 5 are indicating anything directly here for Georgia and our low country counties. And Kish, we're mostly good, but I just suggest that you stay tuned with the forecast, as changes are always possible. Let's see. Rod, is there a hurricane in history that reflects similar conditions as Florence? Not exactly. Nothing that was this strong struck this area and stalled. Of course, we have Isabel, the Outer Banks. We have Floyd, not really the Outer Banks, but that area. We have Hugo, further south, and did move, never really stalled. Hazel, also back in the 50s. And we also had, not Carol, this wasn't Carol. Donna, I think 64, 66, went up through Florida, and then I believe up the East Coast. So not the exact same heading, but the little pieces of each kind of are kind of similar there. Edith says, when will we know for sure where it is going? Our confidence keeps getting bigger and growing. So already we're feeling a little more comfortable locally than we were over the weekend. And I think we'll have a really good idea where this is going by tomorrow evening into Wednesday morning. And still the trends are continuing to focus away from us, just far enough up the coast to spare us any really big nasty stuff. It'll be breezy. Not even forecasting any severe weather at this time based on this forecast path. Jill, I don't know if that's a joke. Is Idaho in the clear, or should they be good? They good. We ain't worried about Idaho. Nikki, Bullock County, not worried. If there are any impacts, it'll be very minimal. Fort Bragg, Alexis, a lot of military folks. Fort Bragg folks, go ahead and give them a call. Let them know flooding, inland flooding, heavy rain is going to be their biggest concern. Shelby, will it hit Augusta, Georgia area? Not looking like it. Looking like it goes in well north of that area and up the coast. Yes, Ashley, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't be prepared. Exactly, you should always be prepared. But as I went through the other systems just a moment ago, excuse me, and we'll go back. I know we're going to go through these quick, but going back here to, of course, going to zoom in. We're going to go back now. Helene. This one is out to sea. Even more confident in this than when we originally were looking at Florence and we thought it was going to go out to sea. This is already beginning to make that turn. West-northwest movement. There we go. West-northwest movement already. And Isaac, we're casually watching, but the focus still needs to be on Florence for us. Into the Caribbean. Forecast to weaken. Wind shear is going to really disrupt this guy. Isaac's not going to like the wind shear, so forecast to weaken. But what it does in the central and in the western Caribbean, that remains to be seen. So yeah, of course, always be prepared. Hurricane season goes until November 30th. For us, our threat lingers through about mid-October or so. So always, as you said, be prepared. Midway, not forecasting any major impacts. Actually, Melissa, as far as named storms, the World Meteorological Organization decides to name several years out. If it is deemed destructive, especially destructive, or especially deadly, or catastrophic, that is when they retire the names. Only after a panel reviews all the nastiness that the storm called do they retire or not retire the names. If they're not retired, yes, they can be reused, sometimes several times. Billy, should we expect high winds on the present path? No, not damaging winds, but it will be breezy to windy day, and perhaps coming with sunshine. Amanda, don't worry, but remain vigilant in Savannah. Kiara, nothing from Savannah schools. Rena, what about Bluffton? Jacksonville, North Carolina. Again, not sure exactly where that is. School's still in effect. We're not forecasting any severe weather here locally on this present path. So overall, this path into coastal North Carolina would spare any nasty weather for us. But what we're watching and why we need you to continue to be vigilant is any shift south in this track would bring some nastier conditions into the coastal empire and the low country. All right, we've been talking for quite a bit. Dave's going to have all this information. If you prefer to watch Chief Meteorologist Dave Turley, he'll have even more coming up. The News at noon. One way you can watch that, I want to bring up the WTOC weather app here. And if you're interested in getting more information, top of the new newscast, of course, we'll not make you wait. We're going to give that information to you right off the bat. All you have to do is scroll down to the bottom of the app. If you're out at the office, maybe you're working today, click Watch Live, and then you can watch the newscast there. Also, video updates after each hurricane advisory in the WTOC weather app and WTOC.com. So stay with us. Next 24 to 36 hours remaining important. We'll keep you updated right here on WTOC.